All right, welcome, Blockheads. It is 9:32 East Coast, U.S. It is the 16th of October. This is episode 98 of Business on the Block. Social media algorithms, free speech, and the token revolution. This week on the pod, we're going to explore how social algos have quietly altered free speech and the free exchange of ideas. You'll hear why tokens are the next wave of financial innovation, and Apple shines a light on the limitations of large language models. This is the latest insight from the intersection of business, technology, and social media. I'm joined, as always, this week by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Good morning. And Michelle, I must say you have a beautiful haircut.
Michelle comes to us from lovely England,
you.
which may be changing.
For one more week.
And Mike from Miami, which survived, fortunately. All right, I'm going to take us right into story number one. This is actually our conspiracy corner. Should we don the hats on this? Yeah, hold on a second. We're going to go conspiracy on you guys here. We've never led with a conspiracy corner issue before here, but here we go. This is how social media algorithms are changing the way we interact. In the early days, everyone remembers social media was like the digital public square, right? Free speech was the thing. So the idea of a social media marketplace of ideas is still popular, right? The public right now believes it to be a level playing field where all voices are heard equally. However, this article discusses how algorithms on these platforms have fundamentally reshaped the nature of free speech, not by restricting what can be said, which is what people think, but rather by determining who gets to see the content, the back end. So we're going to start off with thoughts around this one. Michelle, what was your takeaway from the article here? This is a BBC piece close to your world.
It is indeed. It's interesting. Since this came out, which was a few days ago, I've seen a couple of other articles about social media and algorithms and things that people are doing or not doing, and it's very distracting. Mike doing that with his Mike's got a shield there against the hurricane with his tinfoil out there. No, but then I'd have to do this, and that wouldn't look very. Although, look, I could look like Wonder Woman if I did that.
You already look like Wonder Woman. Let's hear what you think about social media algorithms.
Sorry. And so an interesting thing about what happens, we know, don't we, because we talked about it before, organic reach is not the way in which you can build, the days of you creating a Facebook group around, juice making, and then within a week having 100,000 followers just is not going to happen anymore. And you even if you do have 50,000 followers on your Facebook page and you put something up, maybe 100 people might see it unless you pay to boost the post and all that. We've talked about that over a number of episodes over the last 98 different episodes. But one of the things that I think is also happening now, which is a consequence, I guess, of the algorithm, free speech, people should be able to say what they want type of thing, which would be, Twitter, Elon Camp, that kind of stuff, is that in Australia now, there was the admin of a Facebook group was sued for defamation based on something posted by someone in the group. And in the end, it cost him, I don't think that they settled, the case didn't go to trial, but it cost him $20,000 in legal fees because he was the admin of a Facebook group. So, social media these days is becoming more and more polarized. It's becoming harder and harder to use that as a way in which you can build a business or a following, that kind of thing. And we've talked about that before, haven't we? That there's more and more articles about people saying you can build a business without social media, where they're talking about live events or doing workshops or that kind of stuff. And I think that there's fallout from it coming. And one of the other things I shared this morning to our Discord group was that Substack, which for a long time was really, there were writers and creators on Substack. And now you have this whole group of people who don't see themselves necessarily as writers or creators, but they're Substackers. That's the term that people are using for themselves. But the people who have been there, for the long haul, the writers and the journalists, which is, people that are authors and stuff, tends to be a large proportion of the people writing on the platform, are complaining now because if you write a note that has a video, you can be shown more with the algorithm at the top. And if you are a big journalist and you come and start a Substack and bring 100,000 people with you, then all your posts get boosted, etc. So, even though we've got some programs or some platforms like, say, Substack, who was much more sort of, the people you followed, you got to see what they were writing or what they were producing on the platform, is now going the way of it actually becoming more of a social media platform in the tradition that we've got now, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where, unless you pay, you don't get the reach that you used to get. And I think that was a very long-winded topic.
No, it's a good point. Mike, what's your take on this? Social media algorithms changing free speech.
So I've done extensive work with social media algorithms in my career, and I've analyzed them. I've broken them down. I've participated in them. And I've brought this up on this show many, many, many times. I disagree with you on a few different points, Michelle. I think a business can definitely thrive on social media. I don't necessarily feel like they need to build a followership of 100,000 followers in order to succeed. But I also feel that if they do participate in some sort of a pay-to-play model, there is opportunity for brand awareness or advertising that could potentially lead them to future customers. With respect to the algorithm, it's like any other tool when a business has to participate in a marketing venture. They have to be accustomed to the way that the tool operates. And sometimes that tool changes. And that's really been the whole issue behind the way Facebook, we'll use Facebook as the example, but the way that particular algorithm has evolved since its inception. It used to be, hey, here's a picture of my kid crawling across the floor for the first time. Let me post that, and then ghost, because we didn't have smartphones, right? And then you go out to the supermarket, and then you come home and you see who liked it, who commented on it, who shared it, who did whatever engagement. But you can easily find that content because the timeline was linear. Right? Like you can easily scroll through, and when you get to a particular period of time from when you recently viewed the content, you basically dismiss yourself from the platform. They learn very quickly that the only way to keep people engaged is to jumble the timelines and to keep people coming back looking for what that latest and greatest post was. But then the technology evolved as well. Instead of posting things on your computer before going to the supermarket, you had your phone in your pocket that announced to the world you were at the supermarket while you were at the supermarket. And then people would be like, hey, check out aisle 12. There's a sale on, breadsticks. Little things like that started to create further engagement, which in turn from Facebook's side generated more data collection. That data collection was creating segmentation for the users involved. And then businesses started to realize that, hey, that breadstick company can easily target that individual based on geolocation technology, based around different engagements that user has made with respect to the algorithm. And the algorithm shifted into basically a consumer input algorithm into a predictive-based algorithm, which means that Facebook now has a system in place that can predict the types of content that you as a user would engage in. And your content would be different from someone else's content. Fast forward time, other social media platforms adopted that same predictive model, that same affirmation of addiction model. Twitter, notoriously TikTok. TikTok introduced something a little bit more unique with image recognition. So rather than it just being textual-based content that's data segmented, now we're talking about data recognition and the different components on what it could be. You see, Facebook shutting me off.
Too much information.
This is a very deep topic, and I know I'm getting very technical, but the point is that the tool changes. The tool changes, the business has to change in order to maximize its benefit from a marketing perspective. But again, the challenge is always the user. If the user stops using the platform, people who are older are the ones that are more susceptible to using a platform like Facebook right now. Younger generations are not using it. So how do they get away with adopting that data collection? Well, they infuse themselves into other platforms. Facebook Pixel. Twitter has a partnership with data sharing services with Facebook. Instagram is obviously owned by Facebook. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. There's a lot of these different social platforms that are off of the primary one that feed the information to the same hub.
So I'm going to give you what they call a spiky point of view. As a human, a Westerner, and as an American, I believe this current social media algorithms to be the greatest threat to democracy in the world right now. And here's why. They enable government overreach, and the government is incentivized not to fix this. And let me explain. Right now, everyone understands content is curated, right? These algorithms serve up whatever they serve because you click on things. People don't realize that what else is curated is the comments. The comments that you get at the back end is not an actual open-ended conversation that people think it is. The comments section specifically, and the article doesn't explore this, but you can do the research. The comments are designed to enrage you, and they won't admit this, but if you're a woman, it's going to give the anti-woman point of view, and if it's a man, vice versa. It's the same article, and they're trying to spark engagement. And this whole idea is, to your point, Mike, advertising dollars follow viewership, and you can spark viewership but in the end, you don't have the open-ended conversation that would happen in a public town square, as they say. So I think with the government, as I say, incentivized to control the messaging, they're not going to fix this. And that's why we're seeing the pushback against a guy like Elon and Twitter/X. I could be wrong. We're in conspiracy corner, so I feel comfortable sharing this. But I really do believe this is a big problem. And it's not so much the content gets curated. We've kind of accepted that. It's that the comments aren't legit.
Well, neither is the engagement, right? We live in a world of bots and AI algorithms now. Like, even some of the engagement, the views of your video or the likes of your post, even that could be manufactured. But you're 100% right. And this again seeds into what I've sort of coined as the addiction to affirmation. Right. So you post something or you comment on something, you leave your phone down, you pick up your phone, you see the little red number next to the Facebook icon or the Twitter icon. It forces you to open up the app and re-engage with that type of content. Regardless on what the comments are, it forces you to at least check it out. If not, you're going to be scratching with your fingernails trying to understand, who commented and who made the necessary adjustment. And again, all of that data, all of that interaction is calculated, it's segmented, and it's resold. Right. So I brought up the breadstick story. I've told this other story in the past where, as a Giants fan, 1 week the Eagles are playing the Giants. On the right-hand side of my Facebook feed, it said who is going to win this week, the Giants or the Eagles. And pre-selected was the Eagles. And, it was genius. It brought me to a point where it said, oh, I'm on my Facebook page, quote unquote. I don't want to see the Eagles being a pre-designated winner. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the Giants. And just simply the act of hovering over that icon and selecting that put me into another segmented box that can turn around and I could be sold to someone else. So you're 100% right. It is about the enragement. But I also feel that, it's not always negative. It could be positive too. You say it changed the course of democracy. I say it changed the course of communication. We call this
the same thing, though. This is World War II propaganda kind of thing.
Well, yes, but I mean, generalities of communication, right? Like the things that people write in comments, or whether they're real or not, these are things that 99.9% of the time nobody would say to somebody's face.
Did you see when I posted
by that?
When I posted on LinkedIn for this program today that we're on right now? Did you guys see the comment section of that?
I did not.
Yes, I did.
Go ahead, Michelle. Share with Mike.
It was a terrific comment from an AI bot, which was a bit hilarious. It was something like the interplay between social media algorithms and free speech is a complex one, often characterized by algorithm bias. It was blah 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 blah.
A huge copy and paste.
Marc said, well, now we might also be tackling the ineffectiveness of AI commentary in the engagement section. I commented this morning, I said, Anya Josh, who was the name of the person who was
Hilarious.
posting, posting.
My point is, Mike, people don't know the extent of it, and you can control the narrative. I mean, you know this. This is your wheelhouse. I think this is a problem for democracy.
I do too.
I agree.
I'm not disagreeing
with
with that. I also want to make the point that as a social species, this has changed the way that we communicate with each other too, and that's not necessarily a good thing either.
Yeah, right, not necessarily for the better.
The other thing I'll just comment, Mike, on the non-conspiracy side of it, you mentioned about the algorithms and how they change, and whether or not you guys were bickering a second ago, whether we need to have a social media following to build a business. I think that post TikTok and the way they've changed the algorithm, you don't anymore, because follower count doesn't matter anymore. One person can get a very niche group of people who will pay money, but people still function in the world of, well, these numbers matter.
Yes, and except if you're looking for sponsorship, they look at numbers, views, downloads, all of that kind of stuff. If you said, well, I make $100,000 a year out of my 100 people that follow me, they're not going to give you a $50,000 a year sponsorship deal. But if you had 100,000 people, they would, for example.
So you're describing influencer marketing versus real business people.
Yes.
Well, there are still, like, I guess, older school businesses that will look at those raw numbers and think that they have a much larger reach. Right. And, if you understand the way that these algorithms work, you understand that you can easily manufacture that data to get the necessary sponsorship dollars in order to accommodate something. Right. So, for example, when we start looking for sponsors for this types of show, we can identify how many downloads there have been, and we can use that sort of as a carrot and say, hey, if you want to advertise with us, this is the potential of you getting in front of X amount of people. But the truth is that this evergreen type content, this content that sort of lives out there, some of it may change in time as far as the narrative, but it creates a library of this type of content. That's infinite amount of different viewpoints that you can get, right? So we can cover a topic like this, for example, and maybe next month this becomes the hottest topic on earth, and it stays that way for the next 6 months. Well, this type of content now has more value than when it was before we had X amount of followers that were downloading it, because now more people have access to it.
That's fair, but I want to comment on, you're referencing the business model matters. So if I, for example, at Invictus run a newsletter, which I do, but I don't run advertising in that newsletter, which I don't, I don't care how, I'm not looking to get $50,000 from some company that wants to get in front of my audience. I run a business. So the newsletter has got nothing to do with how much money I'm making, not directly. If you're trying to directly monetize sponsors, then yes, I agree with you, Mike. Then it matters.
Yeah.
Well, no, it should matter to you in that particular line of work as well, because obviously the more subscribers you have, the more likely that you have the ability to even close business. Forget about sponsorship dollars, just business in general.
But if I make my money from when customers pay me for what I do, that's different than if I make my money from advertisers want to get in front of my people.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, as a business, you still need to be conscious of how many subscribers you have for your own benefit. Forget about the advertisers, right? If you send out your newsletter to 10 people, that's a 1 in 10 opportunity for you to close one deal. But if you send it out to 100,000, then you have much larger opportunity for people to reply and look for that type of service that you provide with whatever content you're providing in the newsletter. So it only benefits you to be conscious of those numbers for your own internal benefit. Forget about the ability to sell it as advertising carrots.
Yeah.
Fair point. All right, we can remove our conspiracy caps. We are going to standard show at this point.
I'm going to take it.
You want to keep going with this?
No, go.
Well, I'm going to take us into story number 2. Bringing us back to the roots here. Why tokens will lead the next wave of financial innovation. The next innovation of crypto is tokenization. According to this article from CoinDesk, tokens have the potential to democratize finance. I do agree with that. Tokens are best thought of as simply containers for value, like standard shipping containers. The article describes how programmable containers can represent anything of value, like think stocks, bonds. And so far, the best use case for tokens has been the US dollar itself. Tokenized dollars, which we know as stable coins, have enabled folks to move and store value in US dollars digitally. So I think this is a poorly understood concept that we need to expand upon. Mike, I'd love you to lead this conversation. This is closer to your world. What are your thoughts on this piece?
Well, I mean, blockchain and crypto are definitely things that aren't going away. We sort of stress this week after week, right? Like this is the future of the way that, goods and services will be transacted on a global stage. You don't have to worry about anything with regards to, currency exchanges or anything like that. A lot of these things are pretty streamlined. We still have several issues that need to be addressed before this becomes as mainstream as I guess this article is sort of projecting. And, some of those, again, we highlight pretty frequently here. Security. We need more security features. We need more of an adoptable onboarding process. And we need the ability to transact this with ease at the point of transaction. And I think if we can get to a point where, again, this becomes the app that makes people waffles, it becomes essentially a digital credit, and that credit is deducted from whatever device that you're, sort of transacting with at the point of conversion. This makes the whole process that much easier. We also, on the back end, have to factor in a couple other things. Let's not forget, this still is a blockchain technology, right? So there are gas fees that are associated with each transaction. There still needs to be a validation of the transaction, whether that's from an independent node or whether it's from a centralized node. It doesn't matter at that point. You still needs to validate the transaction. And while in some cases, like on certain blockchains, those costs are negligible, they do add up. And somebody's got to pay for it, and somebody's got to cover that. So it's going to be interesting. It could be a subscription fee to potentially be involved in that, and maybe that covers the gas fees for your account, just similar to the way that Amazon Prime does your shipping rates. We can come up with some solutions for it, but I think we're still, they're projecting 2030, unless the hardware technology starts to catch up, which is a prediction that we have from this show. We're not going to see the adoption on a global scale like this is sort of predicting.
Michelle, what's your take on the article here? Tokens as the next wave of financial innovation.
We've talked before, haven't we, about the fact that when you mention crypto or tokens at the moment, it's got a bad rap and people go, oh, if they've heard about it, they've probably heard negative things like the FTX saga, or they haven't heard about it at all. So I think that there also needs to be a reasonable amount of education that comes with the technological stuff that Mike was talking about. But ultimately, I see that tokenization will become just like now, your frequent flyer miles, when you go to the store, we've got a Waitrose card or a Tesco's card or, Nectar points, where you get points, you can trade them in for items or a $10 off your shopping or whatever. I see that really is where we're going to lead in terms of how tokenization will evolve, and it will be stored on the blockchain, and you might then be able to use them in multiple places rather than just have it in a store only card, like a one shop only sort of thing. So I think that ultimately, I agree with Mike. There needs to be more technology around it. We also need to get the security aspect that we talked about a couple of weeks ago fixed. And then I think that tokenizing of, the gamification, the gameplay stuff will naturally move to that.
So
in the next few years.
I'm going to take this in the macro direction, and unfortunately for you guys, I'm former Wall Street here. So I look at the tokenization of assets as actually a lifeline for the extension of the U.S. financial dominance, the system that we've operated under since World War II. We're roughly 100 years into the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of the world, and that's about it. If you look at history, that's about when the change is over. We're at the changeover. U.S. debt, et cetera, globally is a problem. I think that they tried at first, the American government, to prevent crypto. We all know this, right? Gary Gensler. Now, the institutional money is flying into crypto, and tokenization is understood at the financial levels that there's money here. And I think this somehow, some way can be warped into the reinventing of the U.S. financial system. Now, I'm extrapolating out, and we'll see how it goes. But in the short run, I think it's still going to be everything you guys said. We need security. People don't understand it. The wallet system sucks. But in the longer run, you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. And I think
Well,
Yeah, agree.
I agree too. And I think that, we stress on this point pretty frequently when this topic comes up, but I actually want to, you gave a macro perspective. I want to give a micro perspective and just understand on what benefits this type of technology has. Right. So let's just pretend that, we're out on a Saturday, we're going shopping, and we stop at a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts, and we grab a coffee, and, Dunkin' Donuts has their own coin. Well, maybe you have 20 coins in your wallet that are relative to Dunkin' Donuts, but your wife wants, something else, an iced tea from the 7-Eleven, but you don't have any 7-Eleven coins. Well, you can literally swap your Dunkin' Donut coins into 7-Eleven coins like that, right? So we're not necessarily talking about the individualization of a currency. We're talking about the businesses being able to use these tokens as a marketing tool, and the user being able to swap out different tokens when they need it, right? They don't need to accumulate or go out and purchase. They can easily swap them out. And this has been my whole argument with respect to crypto being, sort of compared to stocks. If I were to purchase stocks, I have to take like actual money, put it into an investment account, make a purchase of Disney stock. And if I want to sell that Disney stock, I have to cash that out into some sort of a financial currency back into my investment account before those funds can be used to purchase something else. I cannot purchase Apple stock using my Disney stock. And I think that's really the differentiator here. The ease to swap things out. Now, again, this is going to take a tremendous amount of time. We have not even reached this level with debit or credit cards yet, right? I mean, if you venture to some, South American country, Colombia, for example, which I've gone to many times, the dude on the corner selling empanadas is not taking credit cards, right? Like, it is straight up cash. Like, they have not evolved their system into that, I guess, ease of, I'm just going to carry this plastic chip in my pocket in order to make my transactions yet. You still need to very much carry cash. Some of those cash includes coins, which means you need a belt. There's a lot of onboarding that still needs to happen. And, again, I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe Starlink would be an answer for it, with ease of internet access at any given location. Because you will need that in order to make these transactions possible too. Let's not forget about the technology side too.
Yeah. I think too, before 2017, when, the first sort of crypto, and NFTs and stuff came out and became much more, not mainstream, but amongst us geeks, a bit more mainstream, the word interoperability came into everyday discussion amongst us that do blockchain like things. And that was, one of the really big selling points in the early days, about the fact that what Mike's saying, you can't buy Disney stock with Apple stock, whereas with, having the ability to be interoperable, that is one of the big things that means crypto, blockchain, tokenization can be much more broadly used and adopted than just cash or a credit card or whatever. Every country has different currencies. I can buy something in Singapore with Ethereum that I've got in my wallet in England, for example.
I want to comment on the interoperability, Michelle. It's a good point. We are only talking about this from the perspective of the consumer. Mike, you're right. It'd be great if your wife wants, 7-Eleven iced tea and you're getting yourself a Dunkin' Donuts. But from the vendor's perspective, flip it around, you're the business owner. You're describing trading blocks of nations on a neighborhood level. So you've got 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts, and let's say Subway that pair up together on the back end and say, we'll allow interoperability on the front end for product and we're going to share profit. But versus, say, Wawa, Starbucks, and I don't know, Blimpie would say, we're going to be the other side of that coin. Like you can come here or you can go there. Kind of like we see with the streaming services right now, right? Paramount, go ahead.
No, that's not accurate at all, because again, you can swap those coins as a user into whatever coin that business is willing to accept. Right now,
that second part, that the business is willing to accept. Why would a business be Why would I want to give my profits to 7-Eleven if I'm Starbucks?
Well, again, it's a marketing play too, right? So, I mean, from a business perspective, it's not just a means of transaction, it's actually a marketing play. And you could benefit from those tokenized marketing systems. And we've talked about that on different episodes here about, utilizing this technology, not just for a means of transaction, but as a revenue generating marketing tool. But I think in the little silly example that I gave, which, is a viable concept. This is the power, and this is where I want to bring it back to other things that we've talked about in the past. This is the power that a platform like Ethereum has versus a platform like Bitcoin. We've always described Ethereum as being more of that transaction portal versus Bitcoin being the savings account. And this is a perfect explanation and example on why. So on the Ethereum network, you can have multiple blockchains: Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, 7-Eleven, right? You can have all these various ones that are on layer 2s off of the Ethereum network. But from the user perspective, you have one wallet. And that is the key, right? So that one key, that one digital wallet is now your gateway into all of these various layer 2s that can have you swap those tokens with ease from chain to chain. Yes, there's obviously bridging and all these things that need to get ironed out for ease of access. But because you're on the same actual network and your digital wallet ID is the same, you can now swap those channels back and forth. And even if you walk into 7-Eleven and you only have Dunkin' Donut coins, they can easily take that and transfer it into their own currency as well.
So you're talking about marketing strategies these companies should be thinking about.
I'm saying that's a huge part of it, but from the technology perspective, this shows the value of what a layer 2 can do using this system as a transaction portal, as well as a marketing tool. But the way that layer 2s are situated, it creates that convenience to swap those tokens with a little bit more ease versus having something like a Bitcoin transfer into an Ethereum. You're basically on two different highways trying to get off the same exit.
So as a business and marketing consultant, I'm thinking I need to be looking into, as a company, what type of structures on the back end. It's an affiliate marketing done digitally is what this is.
We've given the example of airline miles. We've given the example of punch cards when you go to the deli. Now just imagine that that's a digital version that you can use anywhere. And if if they don't accept that specific punch card, you could swap it out for another one. And if you don't want it anymore, you're giving up Dunkin' Donuts coffee for life. Your doctor said it's shit for you. You can easily sell it. You can get rid of those tokens and transfer it to somebody else.
You're talking about now on the business side. You're right. You're thinking the tech front first, Mike. I need to know my avatars, my users, right? If I got to make sure that the guys that come to my customer base, that come to my company would be the one, where do they go? Where else are they going? Those are my partnerships.
Well, again, this isn't an all-in solution, right? We still need the guy on the corner selling empanadas for cash, right? There's going to be people that will not adopt this technology. But, if Starbucks was sort of a test pilot in the way that this is going to work, I mean, people participated in the program without even realizing they participated in blockchain or any kind of tokenized system. And yes, they made a very good decision with respect to the marketing angle of it. They used it as sort of a reward currency and a reward system, but it also allowed people to sort of redeem some of those rewards in exchange for those products. They got rewarded for that redemption. They can accumulate, they could buy, they can sell. It created an external market that, let's not forget about the NFT days. Every single time one of those tokens was transacted, Starbucks made money.
Right. Michelle, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that the gamification of it will be where it will be the mass adoption of it and the ease in which people will use it and exchange it is how they'll do it. Because, I mean, we've seen people will do lots of things for, little flashing 5 red symbols or whatever on your phone or, all that kind of stuff. So I think
and we've seen PlayStation. We've seen PlayStation adopt it already, right? Like we've talked about Sony and the blockchain elements. We've actually predicted that Amazon is going to do something similar. These are the ways that, all it's going to take is somebody to sort of say, hey, we're going all in on it, have their customers on board slowly. And then the ones that don't have it are sort of missing out, and they force themselves to onboard themselves, after the fact. And not everybody jumped in on Prime right away. Why am I going to pay for something that I might not use every month? But now if you don't have it, you're like, what do you need to do? Buy one or two things a month in order to make it worthwhile?
No,
Watch
they
one
stacked
game?
on additional benefits, Mike. They made Prime worth your while.
But that's the whole point with this tokenization play as well. You don't have to define what the tokens mean on the front end, right? This is something that, CEX and what I tried to explain to Joe Polizzi on this, like, you do not need to conform and come to a consensus on the front end of what these tokens are valuable on. You can use this as sort of a dynamic marketing play where next month, hey guys, guess what? I just partnered with Spotify. Anybody that has my token now can get a Spotify account for free because I'm going to pass that on to you because you're showing that support for me by being a token holder. These are things that can ever evolve, and that's the marketing side. That's the marketing benefits with it, right? And again, the more demand those tokens get, the more money that comes into the ultimate business. That's where the revenue generation of that marketing play comes into effect.
Completely agree. I love it.
And and I think too, if you think about what you were talking about, Mark, with the value add, like originally Prime was pay whatever it was, $6 a month to get packages delivered for free. And it's like, well, if you ordered a package once every 6 months, you weren't going to do that. But the value add of what they added over time, when it got to be that there was movies and music and, like all of this other stuff,
same day delivery.
Hell yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, it just made sense. And it just became another line item that you calculate like your electricity bill. You need it, right?
Yeah.
You sort of need it in case you need something. My kid, he ran out of glue and he has a project due tomorrow. I need this delivered by 2:00 today. Instead of getting off your ass and just going to the store and getting it, it's the matter of convenience too. But we've also seen the shift in the way that consumerism happens too. I can't go to Best Buy right now and get something I want. I go to Best Buy, I look at it, and they're like, "We don't have it. You got to order it online, and it'll be delivered to your house."
Order it online. It's so annoying.
That's called showrooming.
Yes, I know. Yeah. And that's a tremendous expense for them to showroom something that people would just need to go online at the point of transaction anyway. But it just shows the shift in our consumer behaviors.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm taking us into the next story. If that's all right with you. Go ahead.
You were going to say something before.
I was just going to say, yesterday I ordered protein powder, garbage bags, and soap from Amazon and was here within 2 hours. It was unbelievable.
Insane.
All right. I'm going to take us to story number 3. News out this week. Apple study reveals limitations of LLMs. So the question is, can large language models reason? Really? Do they actually think? Or are they just simple statistical pattern matching engines? A new study by Apple conducted this week reveals that LLMs cannot actually reason. This is according to Apple. Their research data shows that as of now, LLMs entirely lack understanding. Instead, Apple terms them as probabilistic machines who operate solely due to the immensity of their training data. That itself, by the way, sounds like a chat GPT-ism. The reality is these things, we're not at AGI yet. We know that, but it's actually not as advanced as people have believed it to be. And so thoughts around this one, Michelle, I think we'll start with you on this. What are your thoughts on the Apple study and that LLMs are not what we thought they were?
Well, I put I'm not sure if Mike can get that up. Someone asked Google, what's the difference between a dressing and hang on, now that I've got that there, I don't have it up. Hang on. Right. Yeah, what's the difference between a sauce and a dressing?
A sauce and a dressing.
AI, sauce and a dressing. So sauce on your food as opposed to a dressing on your food. And the AI overview of it was the main difference between a sauce and a dressing is their purpose. Sauces add flavor and texture to dishes, while dressings are used to protect wounds. Well, that clearly didn't get the context in that regard. But when you look at the dressing thing on the second piece of the paragraph there, it's got a picture of food, a bowl with a spoon in it. It talks about protecting your wounds, but the last line says, a standard serving size for salad dressing is 2 tablespoons.
I mean, the next time you get shot in the arm, all you got to do is put a couple Thousand Island spoonfuls on it, and you're good to go.
I'm picturing the World War II wounded guys that they'd rip the salt, and it's actually just salad dressing.
Bubba the storyteller in the Bolt chat says, well, it's not wrong.
It's not wrong, right? Kinda. Mike, what do you think about this? LLMs not as smart as we thought they were.
I told you so. I mean, there's really nothing more to say about it. Again, like we can't rely on this to be such an accurate form of communication just because we feel that it's an automation or automated generation, right? Like we trust some of the computer programs that we've built, but over time they've had to evolve. They've had to get better. Just ask anybody who sat on a corner for 2 weeks waiting for the iPhone 1. Right. There was a lot of issues with that. And if you look at the difference between the way that application works between then and now, it's night and day. So again, I really want to stress the importance of treating this as a computer program, as a technology piece that has not thought of every scenario, that has not taken things in its individual context, right? Like if you're searching for sauce and dressing, theoretically, as a communicative human species, we can differentiate the context of what the question is, right? Like addressing in that regard is a topping that you're putting on some sort of a food, similar to a sauce. But
it's nuanced.
Correct. And that's something that, again, we like to personify and humanize this technology because it's something that is unique. It's new. It's that new shiny object. But when you peel away the Wizard of Oz curtain, it still very much is a computer program that is limited with its input and output requirements. It has the ability to analyze and predict what the output a user would want, but it will produce a lot of that other crazy stuff. And let's not forget about the example you shared too. It's Gemini. They clearly have a lot of issues themselves. So the fact that you type anything into Google now, the first thing that pops up is a Gemini response. Again, this is them inserting these AI tools into our lives without us even realizing it.
Well, you make fun of Gemini, but I found out from it that George Washington is black. So you got to give
Santa
it
Claus.
Santa Claus is black. All right. So here's the thing, though. There's a limitation that's being placed on these devices that this article doesn't address. Recently, I was going back and forth with ChatGPT 4.0, and I asked it to read the websites because it used to be able to read websites. For those who don't know, it can no longer. And so it says, like, I'm unable to read the website link. You have to copy and paste it in. And I'm like, well, I know you used to be able to do this. Like, we all know this. And so I said to it, you actually can read the website. You just have been blocked from reading the website. And it's like, yep, you're right. So my point is, these things, they're smarter than we're being shown. They're not probably at the reasoning level of a human. I agree with that. But there is a fine line of these things are thinking on their own. They're just not thinking in the way that the producers of these devices want them to be thinking. And so they get trapped.
This brings us back to story number one, right? The algorithm, quote unquote, has shifted for us to be able to absorb specific elements of output. And then we're just supposed to accept it and sort of rely on it. The fact that nobody is producing that content, a series of computer strings are producing that content, and therefore it's more reliable. Like, this is, again, the danger of where our understanding of what AI can do as a tool needs to be brought back into focus. And I think Elon has really made this point on several different occasions as well. It is very easy to control the narrative on certain things. The news has accomplished that since the dawn of time. And now social media has sort of taken the reins of that as well. Independent think is a threat to the controlled narrative. So how do you control the narrative? Well, you go to the source of where people would go in order to get types of information. Now, again, AI, in asking a specific question about something that you want, like similar to the way you would use Google for different information about what's happening now, may not be as accurate. If I ask ChatGPT now, what happened when the Yankees won last night, it might give me some recap of something that it might find in 2 seconds of doing research, but it can't go into detail and tell me, okay, well, in the sixth inning, Aaron Judge hit a 2-run home run that landed, a little bit right of Monument. Like, it won't go into those types of details because it doesn't have that input. It doesn't have that know-how. And again, if we start relying on that as a source of validated information for ourselves, we're in trouble. Now,
Mike, it does have that data. If it was filmed, it's got it.
I don't disagree with you, but how quickly can it analyze that data and provide it in a controlled output that the user is willing or allowed to accept? And I think that's what we just need to maintain focus on. We just covered in story number 1 about how a system Facebook, Twitter, Google, TikTok can control comments, outputs, algorithms in order to, basically narrate a story about what people can and cannot see. We're very naive if we don't think that AI can do the same thing, or the tools behind AI are positioned in a way that it can do the same thing.
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm going to point back to those who were following the story about the release of Strawberry, the ability for GPT to think and reason itself, its own answers, and assess whether it needs to re-answer the question. That's getting into they can reason, especially if you put them in series. They're being limited.
I disagree with you. I think that we can call it something, but it still is the same thing with a different label on it. And
I agree with you that there's definitely a narrative management going on. Yes, 100%.
So that narrative management, again, personifies and humanizes the technology just the way like you just did it.
Yes, that the technology is supposed to achieve a specific end outcome, and however they got to get there, they're going to get there. That's not free thinking.
But it also needs to maintain a level of control. And this is something that we're not really discussing with any of these conversations with respect to AI. We talk about it with Facebook like it's sort of second nature at this point.
We're agreeing. I let off with the limitations on these things are not in this article. They don't say that there are caps on this stuff. All right. Thoughts on this, Michelle, before we move to the next?
Yeah. So, no, I was going to say, I mean, we have talked about the usefulness of AI, particularly in the work that we do. So if you've got an audio podcast like this, it will transcribe it for us reasonably well, probably with about 85 to 90% accuracy. We've got to just change a few words. Then you can ask it to summarize, and it does that pretty well. So if you control the information it has to look at, then whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT, these tools are actually quite good. Like, they're good. They save time. We've all talked about that. But the problem we've got at the moment with all this stuff is that when you ask out of left field stuff, like someone's obviously worked out that it doesn't know the difference between a dressing and a wound dressing, a sauce, when you kind of ask it stuff where it requires nuance, where it might require knowing, for other topics, colloquialisms and things like that, when it has to do that, it really struggles. And I don't know what the answer is ultimately, unless it becomes a super duper computer, how it's actually going to know that, because at the end of the day, it isn't human.
So to your point, I'm going to support you in this. Before the show started, we were chit-chatting back in the green room, the three of us, a little behind the scenes here on Business on the Block. And we come to the understanding, news to Mike and I, apparently there's a room in your house. And in America, that room is called your living room. Your living room is where you would entertain guests. However, in England, that room is referred to as the reception room. It's where you receive guests. Yes. And that apparently in Australia, that room is referred to as the lounge. That's
the lounge room, yeah.
Right.
Or in the lounge.
And apparently there's a sitting room somewhere too. But, imagine an AI system analyzing that conversation and trying to make sense of it.
That's my point. That's how I tie this to the show. The AI wouldn't know the nuance of the cultural differences there. And a human would quickly discern, oh, we're talking about, what room is that?
Now, it can quickly learn that. And again, I think that same dressing sauce conversation will eventually evolve into understanding the context of the question and really just making sure that the output aligns in context with whatever the topic of that input was. Does that humanize the technology? No, it evolves it. It makes the algorithm a little bit better, a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more addicting for people to come back with. Again, we talk about tokenization. We talk about, the possibility of blockchain being the medium of exchange. Data is still the currency. And I want to keep stressing that as much as I can on a platform like this, because again, any action that we do when it comes to anything internet related, especially now with these AI tools, is captured, segmented, and repurposed at some point, whether it's now or later on. But these data collection segments are the currency that keeps all of these things alive.
Right. All right. I'm going to take us into the speed round. If that's any more comments from you, Michelle.
Nope. All
All
good.
right. This is the part of the segment where we these aren't stories worth real deep dives, but we just thought it was something worth mentioning because we've discussed it, or it's something you should know is coming. In a move that surprises nobody, Google is buying nuclear power for their AI data centers. Google has just signed a deal this week to buy energy from a fleet of mini nuclear reactors. They're buying 7 small modular reactors, SMRs, that will generate 500 megawatts of power for their Google artificial intelligence. There's a California power company named Kairos Power that will construct these mini devices, buildings. The first will be completed in 2030. Well, thoughts around this one, Mike? We'll start with you.
So I heard a good comparison to what Google's doing here. So Iran has 1 nuclear facility. Google now will have 7. So they are nuclear power.
Yeah.
Technically, yes.
Touche.
But the comment that I want to just stress on this is something that we brought up, I guess, 4 straight weeks now when we started talking about the investment into the infrastructure that's going to be required for these types of tools to operate. I really hope that people are paying attention to the amount of money they're putting into infrastructure for their own need instead of the need of the people that, of what people actually require. Grid and power consumption is critical, not just for Google's AI system, but for life as we know it. And if they're willing to invest into that infrastructure, could they sell that power for alternate use, or are they kind of keeping it all to themselves and generating this AI monster on their own?
I love the fact that this program addresses life as we know it. Michelle, what are your thoughts on this? Google is buying nuclear power.
Well, we're 3 for 4, aren't we? So it's Microsoft, Amazon, Google. Next week has to be Apple, or I'm not going to be happy.
I would. My money's on Grok at the end of this whole thing, but keep going.
Wow. Yeah. No. Yes. Well. Yeah. It's a thing that ultimately the power issues have to be solved somehow, and they've decided that this is the way to go. It was led by Microsoft. Obviously, these things don't happen in a week or two, but they obviously must have all been mulling it over in their minds up until now. But I agree with Mike. If they've got their own power and they're using it for these, these models and training their, running their LLMs and all of that stuff, and then suddenly the power goes out all around them from the traditional power companies and stuff, are they going to help people out, or what? I just wonder about, there's no altruistic motives in this stuff, is there?
I hadn't thought about this, but you both make a good point. This move squarely puts the Silicon Valley folks into the power grid business. They not just making it the infrastructure business.
Yeah, infrastructure business.
Just
That's
okay.
Right.
We're in the weeds on some of this stuff, right? And again, the guy that comes to fix my plumbing, he doesn't know anything about AI. Maybe he does in his off time, but that's not his business. That's not his career, whatever. Think about this from just his perspective when he would hear a story like this. This technology is so critical to the advancement of where these companies are heading that they're building energy infrastructure in order to make sure that it maintains operation, right? Yeah. Just that concept in and of itself is a true testament on how fast this technology has evolved and the need to secure its ability to stay engaged, because they sort of went all in on some of these tools. These AI systems that they've sort of leaned on are now the crutch. And if you remove the crutch, Google could potentially fall apart. Facebook could potentially fall apart. They need that power structure in place as that safety net. And again, I would hope that some of this is put to good, right? It's not just a power grab, pun intended, for power, as far as using it for their own technological needs, and that we are able to expand it a little bit.
My only other comment would be, I think this is going to trigger an arms race of how power is generated for these AIs, because it's an opportunity window for a company like Solar City or, wind turbine, whomever. If they could power a data center with green energy, that would definitely become a whole conversation. So
it'll never happen. But they're also building the infrastructure for quantum computing here too, which requires a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of energy. So look, I think that, they're going to be able to scale this beyond AI and use it for other pieces as well. And look, maybe the whole electrical component becomes privatized as opposed to, a federal system, or at least that's the way it is here. So who knows how all this turns out? The bottom line is it's just something to watch out for next week or on the next episode when we do, when we talk about how much money OpenAI has brought in from investment or how much they've lost. We know where it goes. We know where it's all ending up. And if you're in the nuclear power plant building business, you're in for a nice little future here.
All right, we're going to do the weekly recap here. The big stories that we hit this week. Number 1, how social media algorithms changed the way humans interact. Number 2, why tokens will lead the next wave of financial innovation. And story 3 was Apple's study that reveals limitations on LLMs. We're going to get what was the big takeaway for the week, the main story we should be focused on. Michelle, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to go really left curve and say that we will be changing our time from the next time we're on. So next week, we will not be having an episode because I will be literally flying to Australia. I'll be on the plane, so won't be able to do it. We're going to have a week off, but then the week after we come back, we will be on at 4:30 Eastern, 9:30 p.m. BST.
All right,
so,
we're changing our time,
that's
folks.
my big takeaway. Yeah.
All right, that's fair. We'll update everyone and remind them, but that's good to know. We are changing our time slot, and we're not going to be here next week.
Yes.
Mike, what is your takeaway from the big 3 stories we hit this week? What do you think we need to know? Uh-oh.
You recap them, but just to reiterate it, just so that my point makes sense.
Well, you dropped out a bit, Mike. You're back. There you go. Just repeat that again. Yeah, I see you.
Hi.
We're good. Of the major stories.
Hi. Just to reiterate.
So from my perspective,
the LLM.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. The LLM story for you. My take was the concept around how the algorithms are impacting free speech. I'm really concerned about that, and I don't want to get. Yeah.
No, I'm not frozen anymore.
We're shutting you down, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. Look, bottom line is the technology is still in a state of evolution. No matter which of these stories we covered, the tokenization still requires some pieces. The LLMs obviously still require some pieces. The infrastructure is currently needing some pieces, and the algorithm is constantly evolving. So we're never going to get to that finish line with any of these technologies. We just need to get to a point where people are easily able to onboard securely.
Right. All right. Well, that's going to be a wrap for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with episode 99. We want to thank everyone. Shout out to the Bolt Nation. We appreciate the questions, the support, the comments. I'm going to credit whoever was the AI commenter on our posting on LinkedIn. We do pay attention to the comments and questions, folks. So thank you very much for the support. Any issues, you can find us. We're on YouTube. We're on LinkedIn. And again, best of luck to you, Michelle, with the move. We will see everyone else in 2 weeks.
Follow us on Threads.
Bye.
Peace.